Okay. Good morning. I'm Karen Wetherill, co-director of Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition, and we welcome you with us this morning. Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition has a mission to make all schools healthy places for children to learn, grow, and thrive. We're engaged at the school, the community, and at the state level, and believe that through commitment and partnership, we can best realize our shared vision for healthy, safe, and supportive schools, healthy and successful students, and healthy, strong, and thriving communities. You can learn more about our work at RIHSC.org. We're so pleased to host this morning's program in partnership with the Rhode Island Department of Education. And while we usually organize an annual in-person event, this year is different. There's no doubt we miss the energy of a crowded room of committed school wellness advocates, but this virtual format and the unified school calendar has made it possible for over 850 people to join us from all across Rhode Island, from every school district, in fact, and actually including Block Island, where they didn't have to take a ferry to join us today. And we also had a great opportunity to schedule today's speaker on a topic that's particularly important for the time. So we are thankful for these silver linings. So now I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Marc Brackett to Rhode Island. Marc is a professor in the Child Study Center at the Yale School of Medicine, the founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and the co-creator of its Ruler program, a systemic evidence-based approach to SEL for pre-K to 12 schools. Marc's research focuses on the role of emotions and emotional intelligence in learning, decision-making, creativity, relationship quality, and mental health. He's a board member of CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and he's received universal praise for his recent book, Permission to Feel: The Power of Emotional Intelligence to Achieve Well-Being and Success. And this book is equal parts science, storytelling, and inspiration. And I'm eager for Marc to share his research, experiences, insights with us. Welcome, Marc.
Good morning, and thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, but let's see, there you are. Okay, good morning.
So good morning, Rhode Island. Hello. You're only a couple hours away, but it feels like a long flight. Delighted to be here with you and honored to be here with you. I'm also honored that there are 700 something people, when 800 something people register for a webinar, the data show it's like a third of the people actually show up. So I don't know what's going on in Rhode Island, but you've got like 90% of registrants who are showing up this morning. So I'm just beyond delighted and honored. So with that note, I'm going to jump right into my presentation. Are we ready? Let me ask you, are you ready to dive deeply into your feelings this morning? How many of you are ready for that? All right, be careful what you ask for. You've heard enough about my bio. Again, my name is Marc Brackett, and my primary work is as a psychologist, running around the world, trying to get people to talk about their feelings. And as a matter of fact, we're launching a study this week on educators and how they want to feel. And I'm going to ask all of you to participate in that study. If you're interested, I'm going to put the link in at the end of my presentation. I would love for you to join. It takes 5 minutes. And I think it will be a very important contribution to our field and to all of you in Rhode Island. I'll be happy to hand over the data as soon as it comes in. So if you'd like to stay in touch with me or share some of your learnings today, please use the social media that's there, either Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, and then my website is there for more information. And I'll talk a little bit about more next steps in a bit. Here we go. Can I ask everyone to get settled in their seats, please? I know it's, early morning. Maybe stretch out your neck a little bit. And I'm going to read you this quote that really has resonated with me quite a bit. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain. When you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. Haruki Murakami. So I'd like you to just settle into that quote for a moment. When you read that quote, what comes to mind for you? What does it make you think about? Exhaustion, the here and the now, trauma, COVID. To be present, the pandemic, growth, lots of really interesting points here. I'm just going to briefly share something that I had an epiphany in one of my research studies recently. We asked well over 1,000 people the things for which they're grateful, for what they're grateful for, during this pandemic. And it was very interesting. I think the results were as expected. People said, I'm grateful for my finances, I'm grateful for my health, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful, for the things that were in their immediate surroundings. But one thing that was really that just stood out to me was that less than 1% of anyone in this particular project said they're grateful for the things that are outside their tight sphere. For example, grocery store clerks or healthcare workers, the people who have really been behind, what has helped us get through this. And for me, one of my major, I think, takeaways, from this pandemic has been to not so much focus on the immediate, but also just pay a little bit more attention to the background and to the people around us. And it's funny, when I go to the grocery store now, I just see it as a totally different experience. And today's focus is primarily on building emotion skills, emotional awareness. So I'd like to ask everyone again to get settled in their seats. And if you are doing work with Ruler, then you know this tool. If you read my book, it's like front and center. But I'm going to do a quick review for everyone. On the x-axis, it says the word pleasantness. All of you, right, are feeling some degree of pleasantness right now. Some of you are thinking to yourself, oh, this is a required PD day. I'm kind of forced to be here. I don't really want to be here. The last thing I want to do is talk about my feelings. I hope you're not there, but you might be. Some of you are like +5, like, oh my goodness, I have no words. I get to spend an hour with some guy from Connecticut talking about feelings. So you're somewhere between like, this is the worst experience of your life and this is the best experience of your life. On the y-axis, it says the word energy. +5, you are so energized, you don't know what to do with yourself. -5, you're like, oh, I want to pull the covers over my head and just disappear back into bed. So let me ask you right now, what color are you in this morning? Yellow, high energy and pleasant. Red, unpleasant with lots of energy. Blue, low energy, unpleasant. Green, pleasant but low in energy. Please, what color are you in today? Looks like we got lots of yellows and greens, a few blues. Can't even keep up with can't keep up with all these feelings. Yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow, green, 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 blue. This is fascinating to me. There's no one in the red this morning. I'm the only anxious one in the room. I'm like, what the heck is happening in our world? All right. So let me ask you right now to convert your color to a feeling word. You've got 3 seconds. 2, 1. Wow. This should be on television right now, how fast people are coming up with words. Content, tired, grateful, exhausted, overloaded, nervous, content, excited, defeated, relaxed. Okay, freeze. Can't take it anymore. So let's think about, here I am, your teacher. I've got a big class today. This is like my lectures at Yale. I've got a class of 800 something people. And I've got people who are feeling from distracted to stressed to anxious to content. Like, does this sound like the typical family or the typical classroom if you're a teacher? It's like, I got a class that has from like everywhere, like literally every emotion. So what do I do about that? I'm a little freaked out now as your teacher now, because I got people who are stressed, overwhelmed, scared, lonely, tired, happy, excited, elated, ecstatic, calm, content. So let me ask all of you, what if you are in the yellow and green, which would be a pretty good place for this kind of workshop in the morning, what might be your strategy to support you in staying there? If you are in the red and blue, importantly, I'm never going to tell you not to have those feelings, because as you know from our work, you got the permission to feel everything. But what might be your strategy to shift over for this, at least this workshop, or be comfortable with? So some of you are saying exercise and meditation, which is great, but not during my talk. I need to know your strategy for the here and the now, for this hour together. Coffee, fresh air, your cats, you're going to focus. So coffee, a lot of coffee drinkers in Rhode Island. Wow. Focus, positive attitude, notes. Stay focused, breathe. More coffee, more breaths. Okay. I think we got a lot of strategies here. So, quick question. I want a thumbs up or a raise of hands with all my people on this webinar. You can use a little thing. How many of you have, as a teacher, as a parent, as a person, had like someone in your family or in your classroom, virtually or in person, have like a complete just like meltdown? Okay, my screen is blowing up. All right, so now we're talking about emotion regulation strategies. And so your best friend, your colleague, your student, whoever it is, comes in after having they're freaking out, they're overwhelmed, and you say, well, I just attended this webinar with this guy from Yale about emotion regulation, and we're gonna pull the strategies, the ones that were the most frequently mentioned, and I'm gonna offer those to you. So maybe your kid, I hate school, I'm never going back to school again. They slam their computer and they walk out of the room. And then you walk into their room and you say, all right, honey, I know you're having a rough time, but you know what? I just need you to focus. Just focus on the things that matter. Okay, honey? All right, forget that one doesn't work. Honey, just have a positive attitude. Come on. We know the negative attitude isn't going to work for us. All right, that's not going to work? Oh, all right, you know what? Just go back, open up your computer, and just take notes all day. Just do your notes. All right. All right, I know you can't do that. So you know what I would do is breathe in and out. Just breathe. There's nothing like being in the present moment. I meant honey, Bruce, if it was your kid. Just breathe. Okay, if that doesn't work, just drink some coffee. Okay. The caffeine might be a good stimulant, might keep you a little hyper and focused. So what do you think? Healthy emotion regulation for kids and for friends who are having complete nervous breakdowns. Breathe, take notes, have a positive attitude, focus, and drink coffee. Now, I know some of you are like, I don't like this guy already because he's being cynical. And I'm not trying to be cynical. I like all of you a lot, even though I don't know you. But I want us to get real, right, around healthy emotion regulation. It is hard work. And, breathing is effective. It is effective, just like yoga is effective. But it's not the answer for all of our life's problems, right? Sometimes, like here at Yale where I work, the answer to everything is to do breathing exercises and to do yoga. And we have 60% of our students have anxiety problems. It's really off the charts. And I think we need to do more than that. I think we need to take seriously, from preschool to high school and beyond, this labeling of emotions and the management of them. And so that's what we're going to jump into today. So all of you, or many of you this morning, were saying that you were feeling quite positive emotions, which is fantastic. I should let you know that in our 2 surveys recently, we found that in March of 2020, anxiety was the #1 word. And in July, when we asked teachers, how do you anticipate, all educators actually, anxiety was the #1 word. When we looked at kids, frustrated, bored, overwhelmed, stressed, sad, angry. So, from the perspective of emotions, it looks like people are in a pretty rough place. Now, when we look at the results or the impact of COVID, we see that there's been a 67% increase in parents who are reporting anxious or depressed, a 42% increase in children's externalizing behavior, serious mental distress, 8 times higher. Our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, we know, have had tremendous concerns over this last 8 months, if not for the last 450 years. In terms of right now, higher chances of contracting the virus, greater needs, less access to quality resources, and higher mortality rates. As a matter of fact, among youth who sadly die of the coronavirus, 75% of those youth are children of color. And so this brings up to me something that is important to discuss, which is that these are not individual skills. This is not about Marc or anyone on this webinar finding a way to learn these skills. This is about shifting the way we see the world. This is about shifting the way we see education. This is a model for shifting the way we understand child rearing. And so when we go into the depths of our data here, what we see is that we've got a lot of people in the red and blue, and people not feeling a lot of yellow and green on a typical day. And so I ask all of you, what is the goal? Take a moment, please. What's the goal? What is our goal here? What do we do with all these feelings? Balance, learn to regulate them, be present, focus on the positive, mindfulness. Acknowledge them. Sometimes compartmentalize. Okay. The remainder of my talk is going to be focused on these exact things and many of the things that all of you are bringing up. So thank you for sharing that. The vision of the Center for Emotional Intelligence is to use the power of emotions to create a healthier and more equitable, innovative, and compassionate society. And I'm very curious, the field of social emotional learning has been around for about 30 years now. And 90% of schools say they're doing something with social and emotional learning. But yet, you can see that when a pandemic hit, so many of us have been suffering from extreme anxiety, depression, suicide ideation has gone up. And my big question has been, why is it that the work that we've done for social and emotional learning, why hasn't it been a stronger buffer? And so here are my thoughts. I'm going to argue that we have not given ourselves the permission to feel. And you heard that's the title of my book. And I chose that title very carefully. As a matter of fact, publishers were like, permission to feel, that sounds too soft. And I was like, well, it may sound that way to you, but it's what matters to me. And it's what I think is the missing piece in our nation, in our society, in our world, is that we are mostly running around as emotion judges, not as people who give ourselves and the people we love and care for the permission to be their true, full feeling selves. So I ask you right now, when you think about this concept of permission to feel, like what comes up for you? What are the words that you would use to describe or, yeah, describe that experience of permission to feel? It's about letting go, inner peace, freedom, non-judgmental, empowered, vulnerable, scary, honest, beautiful. So many of you don't know much about me, and I'm just going to share for 1 minute a little bit about my history, because most people don't know it, and I think it's relevant. Right now, I'm a 51-year-old psychologist. I know I don't look that old, but I am. And I had a really rough childhood. Sadly, I was abused as a child for about 5 years by a neighbor. And it was quite the most painful years of my life. And I was basically told that I could not share what was happening to me or I would be hurt and my family would be hurt. You can imagine the feelings for a 6-year-old who was having that kind of experience. And I had 2 parents who loved me, but my mother had a lot of anxiety and she would say things, "Oh my goodness, I'm having a breakdown." That was her regular go-to strategy. And my father was this tough guy from New York who would say something like, "Son, you got to toughen up." And so I learned pretty early in my life that there was nowhere to go with my emotions and feelings. So they went into eating disorders, they went into self-harm, they went into secrecy, lying. I mean, the list goes on. But a magic wand was waved over me by an educator like yourselves. And that educator was my Uncle Marvin. My uncle was a middle school teacher in New York State. And little did I know, back in the 1970s, he was writing a curriculum to teach kids about their feelings. And I'll never forget the moment we were sitting in my backyard when he asked me with the most serene facial expression, a simple but yet profound question, which was, "How are you feeling?" But he did it in a way that wasn't scary. He did it in a way where he just listened, didn't judge. And it was that moment that I was finally felt safe and comfortable to share all of my trauma and where I got the help that I needed. And so I'm here to tell you that it just takes one emotionally intelligent adult to help a kid get through life. Because if it wasn't for my Uncle Marvin, I would not be here today, especially in the position I'm in. And so as we think about this, what are the characteristics of those individuals? Compassionate, unconditional love, empathic, non-judgmental, supportive, attentive, accepting, encouraging, caring, validating. Let's just take a moment and absorb these characteristics. And recognize that when we're in a pandemic, so much of these, or so many of these characteristics fall by the wayside because we go into survival mode and not really permission to feel mode. And, I think that one of the challenges that we have is that we have misguided understanding of the power of emotions. That we as a society, especially here in the Northeast, we think that emotions are disruptive, that feeling is a weakness. And I'm here to tell you that it's just the opposite. Our emotions make us smarter. And that social emotional learning is about learning how to use all our emotions wisely. It's not about only experiencing the pleasant ones and getting rid of the unpleasant ones. because we know from research that emotions matter for everything. Attention, memory, and learning, decision-making, relationships, physical and mental health, performance, and creativity. During a pandemic like this, when we have heightened arousal, when our nervous systems are in fight or flight mode because of the tremendous amount of uncertainty, what happens is that we go into panic mode, we go into catastrophic thinking mode. We don't automatically help ourselves deactivate, help ourselves to process our feelings, help ourselves be present, compassionate, and caring for others. And so the first step, right, is to understand that process, because if we want ourselves to be the most engaging, we want our kids to be the best possible learners right now, we've got to learn how to deactivate. We also have to deactivate to make the most informed decisions, to be the most present for people. Here's what I've shown in my research. The culture and climate of your school can be the strongest predictor of your stress and burnout, which can be the strongest predictor of your own physical and mental health. Last thing I want to say about this slide is that, I've done talks for the real world, corporate America, tech companies, financial institutions, and a lot of the big bosses say things like, I don't know, this emotion stuff, it's soft skills. And I'm like, you just don't understand, that how people feel at your workplace is driving their productivity, their creativity, their performance, which I have the research to prove. So I ask all of you to step back and think for a moment. Are you an emotion scientist or are you an emotion judge? Are you someone who accepts all emotions as information, or are you someone who says, oh, that's just error, that's just like, I don't know. Are you open, curious, or closed? Are you in learner mode or are you in knower mode? Do you want to get granular? So for the superintendents on board, I asked about 100 superintendents about 2 weeks ago, what's the difference between anxiety, fear, stressed, and overwhelmed? And the number one response was, there is no difference. And I was like, you all just made it even more real in terms of why I have a career. And I said that jokingly, but we've got to get granular about our feelings. We've got to get specific and nuanced about our feelings. Because if you can't label your feelings accurately, you're not going to know what to do with those feelings. When you mess up, how many of you have messed up? Raise thumbs up, raise of hands. How many of you have made an error over the last couple of months in terms of your own regulation? Like seriously, you're like, oh my goodness, this is not good. Just to give you an example, my mother-in-law got trapped with us for 7 months. She's from Panama. And long story short, month 1, I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. I got someone in the house. She's going to help cook and help clean. By month 3, I'm like, all right, what's going on with the flights to Panama? By month 5, I'm like, I'm going to put myself in a psych ward. By month 7, I'm like, I'm going to run away from home. And it got so tense in our house that one night at dinner, she goes, are you really the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence? And I was like, not tonight. No, not tonight. So I'm not going to go into the details of that meltdown, but all of us, right, have and then I was like, I went up to my bedroom, then I'm like, Marc, you're like the freaking director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. You have no skills. What's going on here? 25 years of being an emotion scientist. You're running around the world trying to get people to talk about the feeling, and you can't even do it yourself. You're a phony. You're an imposter. You're can anyone relate to that? Oh, it's hard work to be an emotion scientist all the time. It's effortful. It's easy to be the emotion judge, isn't it? It's easy. As my father would say, just toughen up, son. That's the emotion judge. Okay, Dad, so that means you have no responsibility for my healthy emotional development. Thank you. That's going to result in 10 years of therapy and 25 years of science on emotional intelligence. So we've got to move away from this soft skill stuff. Drives me out of my freaking mind. This is not a soft skill. These are hard skills. We need to change the reward system. We have to. We've got to value this side of the report card. People want these skills in their employees. People are looking for people who have these skills. So what are the skills? R-U-L-E-R. Recognizing, understanding, and labeling emotions. So I ask all of you right here, right now, what's the psychological difference between anxiety, fear, overwhelmed? You've got 30 seconds. The winner gets a free book on me, and I'll work out with my partners on this to get you that book. You can't say nothing. I already gave that away. That's not true. Come on, people. I would not give you a question that would be nothing. You're killing me here. How you respond, how you deal with it. So a lot of you were talking about like what you might kind of the response to it, but I'm trying to get really specific here. Anxiety is about uncertainty. Like right now, what's happening? Is it going to get better? Are things going to change? Fear is about impending danger. Overwhelmed is having way too much on your plate and feeling like you're suffocating from it. Do you see the differences? Does everyone see that? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you. Uncertainty, impending danger, too much on your plate. Those are not the same thing. And by the way, all of those emotions require different strategies. How you manage the uncertainty is different how you manage fear, which is different from how you manage overwhelmed. So we've got to get more granular, people. This starts by becoming self-aware of our own emotions. It comes from being aware of other people's emotions. So I'm going to now demonstrate an emotion. You should all be able to see me a little bit. Is it bigger now? Give me a thumbs up. Yes. You can see my whole expression. All right. Yay. All right, here we go. I'm going to display an emotion. All of you are going to say what it is. Are you ready? Freeze. 3, 2, 1. Anxiety, bored, trepidation, calm, content. Anxiety, passive, bored, nervous, confused, happy, calm, questioning. Okay. So that's interesting, huh? It looks like every emotion that's on the mood meter showed up in my facial expression. From anxious to apathetic to bored, to excited to sad, to happy to relaxed. All right, what the heck is going on here? What does this tell us about our friends from Rhode Island's ability to perceive emotion? How many of you think you need a little bit more training in emotional intelligence? All right, so I was trying to be just calm and present. So now it's very interesting. I'm trying to look calm and present, but people are like, what's wrong with him? He's anxious, he's overwhelmed, he's bored, he's apathetic. It's no wonder I have no friends. Now I wonder why people, when I go to work, are like freaked out by me. I'm like trying to be like calm and calming and content and like, oh my God, look at Mark's facial expression. He's all anxious and worried and nervous about something. So what does this tell us? Am I just like unable to express my feelings, or are you all projecting all of your mishigas on me? It's complicated. This is not a simple thing. Context does matter. We also make attributions. Here's what I'm here to tell you. Behavior, facial expressions do not always equal what's going on inside the body and the brain of the person. The only way to know how someone is really feeling is to be that Uncle Marvin. The only way to really know is to be that Uncle Marvin. Expressing and regulating emotion. What do I do with these feelings? Do I have the permission to express my feelings? How many of you at work feel like you don't really have the permission to express your full range of emotions? Like you have to show something on the outside, but you feel something on the inside. So many of us have to do that because we have to hide our true feelings. It's a weird mindset. We can't tell anybody how we're feeling, although it always shows up somehow or another. And again, that goes back to the principle that we should suppress, repress, deny ourselves the permission to feel, as opposed to feeling safe and comfortable being our true full feeling selves. Now, also imagine, as someone said earlier, imagine what it's like for the LGBTQ students in our schools. Imagine what it's like for the children and adults of color in our schools, because the rules aren't the same for everybody. And this is, again, why these are not skills about the individual. These are skills about schools, communities, counties, and states, countries. Everyone needs equal permission to feel. Everyone. The rules can't be different for different groups of people. So I have a very close friend here who is a Black psychologist. He's a professor. I'm also a professor, but a white guy. The rules are different for each of us. My expression of anger, his expression of anger is perceived differently in society. That's an equity challenge, not a skill challenge. Regulating emotions. How are we managing our feelings? What are the strategies that we have to manage them? So I call them the big 7. First, you got to give yourselves the permission to feel. Then you got to work on managing your physiology. You got to learn the exercise to down-regulate. You got to engage in self-care, and it's not selfish. You got to get the right amount of sleep. You got to eat the right amount of foods and the best foods that you can possibly. And you got to get that exercise in. You got to find 2 minutes a day to do things you enjoy. Take a 5-minute walk outside, even if it's freezing outside. Just look at the sky, look at the water, look at the ground, look at a tree, look at a cloud. Do something to give your brain a rest. You got to stay connected no matter what. I'm an introvert. I don't even like people, to be honest with you. I'm so sick of this world. Just kidding, sort of. But as someone who prefers solitude, I'm desperately missing the social connection. And it's one reason why I like connecting with all of you on these webinars. It gives me that sense of having purpose and being, helpful. But it's hard. It's hard right now. And we've got to be creative in the ways that we stay connected. We've got to learn how to manage our thoughts. Catastrophic thinking is our worst enemy. And I ask all of you, how much training do we provide our nation's youth in monitoring their self-talk? Really monitoring their self-talk. And noticing, wow, I'm a self-saboteur. I need to shift that to being more self-compassionate, more empathic to myself. I'm here to tell you that I don't see much of it. We just let it go. And I've learned from my own childhood and my own research that as a kid who had a really rough time and had terrible bullying, other people defined my reality for me. You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too tall, you're too short, you're too dark, you're too light, you're too feminine, you're not masculine enough, whatever it is. And then because of no prevention, started believing it. And then it metastasizes in our brains and our bodies, and then we start becoming it. So this is why this work is so important, because in many ways, it's our moral obligation to ensure that children develop these skills. Just a few things, and then I'm going to wrap up in, let's say, about 10 minutes, and then we'll take questions and have our panel. We've got to move beyond happiness is the goal. I stand before you as a neurotic Jewish professor who cannot be around people who are trying to be that toxic, positively self person. It's all going to be fine. Okay, thank you very much. Love you. Come on. Like, that's just not helpful, right? We got to be real here, right? There's not a lot to be happy for. We can strive for being well-being, to have wellness right now. We can strive to have wellness right now, but like this, like, you know, it doesn't make sense to like fake the happiness. It doesn't do anybody any good. And of course, we're going to have moments of happiness. Like, we want to have those, but you can't be happy all the time. How many of you like can be around people who are happy all the time? It's not real. Come on, people. We got to have greater balance in our curriculum. If I were to ask you right now, how much time do you really spend I'm not sure it's enough. Are our families involved? Are we educating them? Making sure they're part of it. They understand the science of emotion. Are we getting rid of these quick fixes? I can't tell you how demoralizing it is for teachers. All right, now we're doing grit. No, now we're doing mindfulness. No, now we're doing restorative practices. No, now we're doing bullying prevention. No, now we're doing breathing exercises. No, now we're doing growth mindset. We just got to move away from this quick fix model and start thinking systemically about this work. That's embedding this into the immune system of our nation's schools. And we got to focus on prevention and not just wait for intervention. Think about it. So many of our schools are just waiting for things to go wrong, and then we start trying to figure out how to fix it. Why not just provide everyone with an adequate emotion education? And then I want us also to think about, are we evaluating our policies in our schools, in our communities, in our states? Are the policies aligned with healthy development? As I said earlier, we need to have greater focus on structural issues that perpetuate inequities, including those related to stigma and racism, because not everyone has equal permission to feel. And until we're a country, until we're a school system where all kids have equal permission to experience and express all emotions, we're not going to be the best place that we can be. So a few last things. One is Connecticut. We're doing some pretty cool work here, and I'm just grateful for philanthropists, the Department of Education, legislators. We have Changemaker Fellows. We got both teachers unions. We got the superintendents. We got the RIHSC, so the co-ops. We've got Association of Superintendents, school boards. Everyone came together in Connecticut, and we launched a course about 5 weeks ago called SEL During Uncertain Times, and 27,000 of our educators have already signed up for it. And we're going to make that course available nationwide in just a couple of weeks, so get ready. The last thing I want to share with you is a little bit about Ruler. So Ruler is a systemic approach to SEL, trying to get schools to move away from that piecemeal model. And we have 4 main areas that we like people to focus on. The first is, we gotta get everybody on the bus. And emotions matter. We got to deepen those skills for everybody. We got to think about the climate of our schools. And we got to evaluate our policies. So it's 4 aspects. It's not just teaching skills. It's everyone is on the bus. Everyone's working continuously to work on their skills and develop their skills. We're thinking about it from a community standpoint and a climate standpoint, and we're making sure that all of our policies and pedagogy are aligned. And then we get the outcomes that we all care about. So very briefly, with Ruler, it's about adults first, as some of you know, then students, then families, and OST. And we have our partners here from Playworks. And I include that there as well, of course. In the curriculum level, it's from early child all the way up to high school, different kinds of learning for different grade levels. Thinking about how we want to feel as a school, building that emotion vocabulary. That's the cheat sheet that's on the inside cover of my book. So embedding that mood meter tool into the way we operate as a school, from arts to instruction to building self-awareness. We have an app that we have to help people track their emotions over time. To tools that help us be our best possible selves, called the meta moment. To tools that help us gain perspective skills, perspective taking skills, and interpersonal problem solving skills and empathy. So let me wrap up by just sharing a couple last things. One is, we've done tremendous research on this work, and we found it makes a difference, from students to teachers to classrooms and schools. And a few last things to just help you take some skills and strategies away. One, try to evaluate your routines. Are they working for you? Are they working against you? Can you be a preventionist? Think about who you want to spend time with over the next couple of months, and make a plan to spend time with the people who are going to help you be your best self. Be aware of emotional contagion. What I mean by that is that a stressed out adult in a school is a stressed out classroom. Emotions are contagious, both the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones. We have to monitor that. Be an Uncle Marvin. Remember that the mere presence of someone caring reduces the effects of stress. Engage in what we call traditional empathy, which you all know about, being kind and compassionate. But think about engaging in positive empathy. Finding the things that are going well for people and spending a little bit of time embellishing those. You know, sadly, I had an aunt pass away of COVID about a month ago. And she was a great woman, died very suddenly. Thousands of people reached out to me, and I was very grateful for that. At the same time, we were on CBS This Morning News with Gail King and the whole Ruler model, and it was so exciting. I think 5 people were like, congratulations. And it made me wonder, you know, about why is it that we are so hesitant about complimenting, about not giving fake praise, but just letting people that we notice the things that happen that were positive in their lives. And what research shows is that later on in life, when we reflect on our relationships, those are the people that we feel the most connected to. So please start engaging in the positive empathy. Be the first to initiate joy, to apologize and forgive, and maybe even consider your best self each morning. Maybe it's more patient, maybe it's more compassionate, maybe it's more caring. So my last slide. 1, please give yourself the permission to feel. And give everyone that you love, and even the people you don't love so much, that permission. Strive to be that scientist and not the judge. Remember, this work is about accepting all emotions and using them wisely. Appreciate that developing these skills can be a lot harder than learning other skills. It's a different area of our brain we're talking about when it comes to emotional intelligence. This is the hard work, especially during a pandemic. Try to be the role model, as I said. If we can, I would be more than honored to work with the state of Rhode Island to think systemically about this work. Let's do it. Let's make Rhode Island the second emotionally intelligent state. Are you ready? Come on. Finally, you know, a lot of people, when I do these kinds of presentations, they say, but Mark, you know, you had sexual abuse in your childhood, you were bullied horrifically in school, but look, you made it. And I have to be honest, I get mildly offended by that, because those comments fail to take into consideration all of the granular things that really impacted my healthy development. First, my parents didn't know what to do with my abuse. They really didn't know what to do. They were shocked, they were overwhelmed, they were angry, but they did get me a therapist. Two, my Uncle Marvin, God Almighty, God bless Uncle Marvin and all the Uncle Marvins in the world who make that space, who are those compassionate emotion scientists who give kids the permission to feel. Third, I got involved in the martial arts, changed my life to become a black belt. Fourth, I went to college. Fifth, I majored in psychology and got a PhD in emotional intelligence. And sixth, I spent 25 years of my life running around developing curriculum. So my goodness, I have dedicated my whole life to healing, my whole life to building and learning the skills that I need to thrive and survive. And I'm still working on it. And then I visit Rhode Island or New York City or Connecticut schools, and I walk around and I see many, many millions of kids. And I wonder, my goodness, are they going to have that opportunity? Are they going to get all the supports they need to ensure their well-being, to ensure their success in life? And I don't think we're there yet. And so I want to end my presentation by saying again, it really is our moral obligation to ensure the healthy emotional development of our children. And what that means is that it is our moral obligation as the adults who are raising and teaching kids to do the work for ourselves first, to ensure that they have the most positive and healthy development. And on that note, I just want to thank you for inviting me to Rhode Island. And I am beyond grateful for the opportunity to share this work with all of you. There's my website if you want to learn more. I encourage you to sign up for newsletters and blogs if you'd like to get free information. And I'm going to turn it back to my colleagues and just say a final quote from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so, tons of gratitude for Rhode Island. I look forward to working with you in the future. And I'm also excited to bring back this great panel that we can have a nice conversation with.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark, for really a soul-stirring presentation. I think you can see from all the responses you're getting, it's exactly what so many of us needed to hear and think about and plan for. There's a lot to unpack, right, with this emotions work and how they play out in our own lives, and certainly with so many educators, I think, in the development of children. One thing I know I clearly got out of the book, and you commented on a bit, which encouraged me to know, is that emotional skills don't have to be innate. You actually can learn these, right?
They're not
innate. Yeah. And so I think, though, is it like a lot of things like learning new languages, that it's almost easier to learn when you're younger? Would that be right? And so like, that's why schools are such an important place.
Most things are easier, right, to learn when you're young. However, the great news about these skills is that they're developmental. And so we want to bring them into children's lives as early as possible, but you can't teach certain skills until children get older, right? It's like language, right? You can't teach a 3-year-old how to write poetry, but you have to teach them how to have basic phonics and language. And so what we want to do is build children's emotional brains by teaching them words like happy and sad and lonely and scared when they're like younger, and then we get older and we learn words like alienation and elation and commitment and all these kind of more nuanced terms, so that essentially you think about it, that a child's brain, right, is kind of like, it's like a tree. It just grows into all these branches and leaves, and all that emotion knowledge is part of that beautiful tree.
Thanks. So here's a question I have, because I thought a lot when I was reading the book, and you've probably a lot of us, this sentiment have been saying about we shouldn't just go back to normal after this pandemic. We really should build back better. And I've seen certainly a lot of educators and school staff and districts really recognizing over the past 8 months how critical kind of this relationship work is with not just the students, but their families and the staff. But I guess my question is, what can schools really do, or I guess us as individuals, to ensure that this SEL work really can be a part of building back better?
I think we have to, no, I really don't like it when people say we have to like scrap everything and start over. I think that's ridiculous. You know, I think that a lot of what schools are doing is great. I really do. I feel like teaching is the most honorable profession in the world. It's the hardest work in the world. It's the most important work in the world. And I think most teachers go into the profession with the best of intentions, and they are trying their hardest to help kids learn and develop. I just think that we have this missing piece. You know, none of us got an emotion education because our society didn't value it. And so it's like, I think in many ways, the future is finding, you know, what aspects, you can't fit everything in. So it's like, what are the little pieces that we can pull out that may not be so important right away? And then how do we ensure that the social and emotional learning pieces are infused right into the way leaders lead, in the way teachers teach, in the way students learn? And how do we make sure that like we're not just focusing on testing and assessments to get kids into college or career, whatever it is, but that we're thinking them as whole beings, and that their well-being is equally as important as their grade point average. Because the truth is that, I mean, I always tell this to parents, and I work at a very strange university. I just say that because I didn't even know what Yale was growing up. I grew up in a very kind of low income family, so I couldn't relate to this. And and I have, every one of my students has higher SAT scores than I ever had. The only difference is I grade their papers. And I say that because if your goal is to get your child into like the top school and for them to be depressed and anxious and chronically overwhelmed and envious, then congratulations. But I don't think that's what we want for our kids. I think we want our kids to, yes, have the academic skills that they need, but we want them to be healthy. We want them to have wellness. We want them to build good relationships, to find passion and purpose and love in life. And so if we want that to happen, then we've got to make it part of the curriculum.
Yeah. I hope we would all agree on that, because that's so true. But of course the question is, what's the path? You know, how do we?
Path is preschool integrating. We have the curriculum to do it. We spent 25 years doing this. It's there. You just got to make it part of. You got to.
Yeah.
You know, every district should have a director of social and emotional learning that's works with the superintendent to guide, you know, the seamless infusion of social and emotional learning. If you do that, my goodness, great things will happen.
Yeah, great. Well, this is actually a good segue, Mark, to welcome a few Rhode Island SEL champions to our discussion. And I'm going to introduce them all. They should be coming now. So I'll give a quick introduction, and then I'm going to ask each of them to talk a little bit about kind of their journeys in their school communities. So we have Sarah Cordemanche is the Chief Teaching and Learning Officer, School Improvement and Systems Accountability for the Pawtucket Public Schools, where the district is using integrated tiered systems of support for SEL and equity through services and programmatic resources. Dr. Andrew Anderson is the principal of Barrington Middle School, where the district is actually in the 4th year, or as he told me, 3.5 maybe, of the ruler program implementation. And then we have John Gay. He's the executive director of Playworks New England, which is a partner with Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition and Blue Cross Shield of Rhode Island for Recess Rocks in Rhode Island initiative, supporting safe and inclusive play. So why don't we start with Sarah, if you want to begin by giving us a little bit of an overview of your work in Pawtucket.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. It is an honor and privilege to be here this morning representing Pawtucket. So thank you to the Rhode Island Department of Education, and thank you to the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition. We are very fortunate in Pawtucket to have such a dynamic school committee and forward-thinking leadership to be able to form committed partnerships with organizations, with our local 930 union, because our leadership believes that the heart of our organization is service leadership. And when your organization believes in service leadership, you in turn become service leaders. Our work this year on behalf of students and families, as you all know, has been daunting. But staying connected and grounded in the facts and evidence of what is happening has made this pandemic manageable. And we have in fact operationalized an integrated tiered system of support for students that focuses on a whole child approach in providing them tiered services, which means both the
Excuse me, Sarah? Sarah, can you hear me?
That's weird.
which include Yale Ruler.
I don't know if she can hear. I don't know if you can hear Sarah, but your audio is coming in and out.
Oh no.
Oh, there you are, loud and clear. Okay.
All right, I said a lot, but to summarize, we've got a lot going on. The priorities have been facts and evidence-based practices, which include Dr. Marc Brackett's Yale Ruler. We've really tried to prioritize through our Wellness Wednesday initiatives and other district programs, our adults first. We're running mindfulness-based stress reduction courses and a really robust series of professional development, because adults have to come first to be able to put our children and youth first. So a huge thank you to those partners, those community partners that we work with, because without a layered system of support, we can't provide a tiered system of support. So we have to make sure those partners are on board. Sustainable planning in Pawtucket includes layering strong foundations for social emotional learning with resources grounded in those social emotional standards, those CASEL 5, self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Those are our priorities in alignment with the verbs from Dr. Marc Brackett's ruler: recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating. In Pawtucket, we believe that sustainable practice is the only way to create systemic change. So I thank you for this opportunity to be able to share a little bit about the work we're doing in the alignment of our data systems and actions.
Terrific. Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to move along. We'll be able to, I have some questions, and then I'm going to encourage any of our attendees, if you have questions either for Marc or for everyone, any of the panelists, you can put those into the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can before the end of our time together. But let's move on now to Dr. Anderson from Barrington Middle School. And I mean, Barrington Middle School, all I can think about, you are right in the thick of emotions with those middle school adolescents.
Absolutely. Every day is an adventure in middle school, for sure. So thank you so much for having me this morning. And Marc, thank you so much. I love listening to you speak. It's always a treat. So I just wanted to quickly share with you our three phases that we've implemented here at Barrington Public Schools in the middle school, as well as maybe some tips from the field, so to speak. So our journey started about 4 years ago with Ruler, and we started with a district leadership team and a school-based leadership team. So each school in our district had a few folks, general educators, counselors, administrators, that went off to Yale and received training. So it was all about them and their learning. And we had some frequent updates and conversations with that team, with our administration. Phase 2, which was our second year, and the second year was all about the adults and the adults learning. We dedicated every faculty meeting at Barrington Middle School and our rest of our district to ruler training. We made sure that our entire faculty and staff were trained by that leadership team. When we could, our ruler leadership team and our administration, we wanted to model the strategies, the ruler strategies during our common planning times, our professional learning community time. We established district goals and school goals on the rollout of the training of our faculty and staff. So we embedded it right there in our school improvement plans and our district plans. Our leadership team and our school counselors work to curate and then tailor grade level ruler activities for the next year for when students would learn. We had frequent parent communication and information nights right along the way. You know, just as much as we're informing our faculty and staff, we want to inform our parents as well. And then we had a really deliberate, specific approach on focusing on the social emotional learning of our adults. We placed an emphasis on building that positive and that supportive culture and climate. So that was year 2. So year 3, which was last year, that's when the students learned. So year 2, adults learn, year 3, the students learn. The students, and we used our advisory time to really kind of teach a lot of these lessons. So students were specifically taught ruler during the advisory, and the language and the tools were being reinforced throughout daily instruction. It wasn't just an event, it was happening throughout. Our adults continued to learn. We had a few book clubs, the Permission to Feel book club. We had these faculty meetings where we had these ruler gallery walks where the faculty brought their charters and we displayed them in their cafeteria. We took examples of how teachers are using the mood meters with their students, and that way the faculty can learn from one another of how they're implementing in their classroom. We continue to establish our classroom goals and then also, you know, continue with that frequent communication to parents. Some helpful tips that I think might be useful to folks that are just maybe starting this work. First and foremost is you got to be intentional. You got to be deliberate on the social emotional learning for the adults, right? So you got to focus on building that positive and that supportive culture and climate. Super helpful if you can incorporate this work as part of your school and your district goals. What gets measured matters. Incorporate and model ruler strategies in all aspects of your learning community. So, you know, it's your interactions with your adults. It's how you set up your faculty meetings. It's your common plan time, your professional learning community. Create opportunities for teachers to share out. So we found that very successful having those gallery walks. So they know that, you know, a little bit later on in the year, the month, they would be showcasing their charters or mood meters or blueprints. They've given something for them to work towards. Provide the regular updates to families. And as a parent in the district, I have 2 boys. It was really helpful to have those conversations with my sons as a parent and as a charter. How do we want to feel at home as a, you know, just as an extension of how they want to feel in their school. And then last, super important is social emotional learning is not an event. It's something that does not just happen in advisory time. It really, it's everything, and it really is everywhere. And it really is the heart and soul of your learning community. So I just wanted to share quickly our phases and also some tips from the field from Barrington.
That's terrific. Thanks. I'm sure you could probably get a lot of questions being an early adopter, Barrington. So for others that are looking to implement some of these same strategies with ruler, I've got to give a shout out to your assistant superintendent, Dr. Paula Dillon, because I'm going to say it was, I don't know, maybe even 6 years ago where I first heard of ruler. And I think she was writing a grant and I wrote a letter of support, but she was on this very, very early, and she connected through the district wellness committee, actually connected me with the Yale Center and with Marc. So if you're out there, thanks to you. But thanks, Dr. Anderson. Those were great tips for folks. I think the one about families, I love that, because I think you're teaching and kids are practicing in schools has to be modeled, and having the that stool, the 3-legged stool, that the family is so important. So that's critical. And also the piece about, you know, how do you get the adults on board first is really, I think, critical for any implementation. All right, let's move along to my friend, John Gay at Playworks. And as I said, we've been working together. I think this is our 5th year, John, right? With the Recess Rocks initiative. And for those schools, I know a lot of people said, well, you know, my district may not be able yet to prioritize, or, you know, we're certainly, maybe it's funding to have the ruler program, but certainly with those younger kids, we know that that playtime is a time where a lot of these social emotional schools are being developed and practiced. So can you speak to that, John?
Definitely. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Gay. I'm with Playworks, and just a big thank you to the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition for both being a partner to Playworks, but also putting forth this event this morning. Big props to all the educators for coming. And you know, I know it's a really challenging year. I come from a family of educators, so I really appreciate all the hard work you're doing in schools. And so I think 3 really quick things to say, and then but before I do that, quickly, the background on Playworks: we are a nonprofit community partner. We focus on helping kids be active, but also teaching them important social emotional skills through play. We do that by partnering with schools. And so I think one of the great things about Marc's program is it actually has a lot of alignment to how Playworks approaches working with schools. I think it focuses on building that community, working with adults, and really creating the conditions. Just a little bit more background on the Recess Rocks is over the past 5 years, Ty, you're right, this is actually going into our 6th year. We've worked with 100 schools across Rhode Island. You know, Barrington and Pawtucket are actually 2 of the 12 fully Recess Rocks districts in the state. And over 4,500 educators have been trained by Playworks and through this coalition on how to prioritize play for social emotional learning. So, and I just want to thank Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island for their support of the initiative over the past 5 years. So first of all, on the play front, I think play can be one of those tools that's going to help kids be overcome and feel their emotions. So I think as Marc was talking through the different techniques around meditation and you know, letting out a cry, I think play is another one of those things that kids can do, right? And so the American Academy of Pediatrics have found, and they recommend, that developmentally appropriate play with adults and with their peers is what will lead to helping kids develop those core social emotional skills and helping to lead to executive function and nurturing relationships down the road. You know, I think you don't need to create, Rhode Island has been incredible at creating a space. So in 2016, when the recess legislation passed, it actually prioritized and created a place for recess as a priority for kids in the state. And so now, if you can make that place somewhere where kids can be playing and having fun, they're going to develop those core skills. And so, just for a quick example, you know, my son was learning how to ice skate, kept falling down. He was like a fish on ice and just couldn't get up. But as he set that goal and really tried to just continue to push himself and persevere, it was through that play where he was developing that growth mindset as well as those goal setting that's really important, right? And you can do that at recess when kids are just learning games like tag or learning how to hula hoop. You can put that into perspective. I just wanted to quickly say, in this new virtual space, you know, I think there's still a room for play, right? So Playworks has launched a whole new tool called Keep Playing. Keep Playing is a weekly game that gets emailed out to educators, and that game has an SEL competency. So one of the more recent ones was Night at the Museum, and Night at the Museum is when the facilitator on the call is actually leading a game, and the kids, you know, when the facilitator looks, they need to pause. Kids are learning how to kind of control their emotions, both in a positive way, right? To you know, be quiet and to be regulated, but also we celebrate those emotions too. So when they're successful, you can celebrate those emotions. The second thing I'll say is that recess is just this untapped and essential opportunity for kids to develop the social emotional competencies that are critical to learning. You know, you don't need, like I say, the thing about recess is it's part of the school day, right? It's already there. So if you can just maximize that and create it as a safe place where every single kid can get in the game, it's integral. So what Playworks really focuses on when we work with educators is creating that safe space where every kid feels like they can be included. Every kid feels like they can participate, finding what options and choice that those kids have. And so the whole thing about Recess Rocks here in the state is about giving educators the tools to create a safe and healthy space for play at recess. And so we train teachers and give them the tools and train the aides and the monitors on how to give them the tools to actually make sure kids are engaged. It helps build those relationships that are critical to social emotional learning. It also helps build to the space, right, and the conditions to the space where kids can learn those core competencies. And then I'll just finish by saying, I think out of all the SEL programs that are out there, I do think the ruler program actually most closely aligns to what PlayWorks tries to do. So speaking to where Marc's presentation was touching upon, in terms of creating the conditions for social emotional learning, right, the charter part of the ruler approach, one of the big pieces of recess that we did in Recess Rocks is actually work with every single school to create kind of the recess rules. And they can be as simple as, you know, have fun, play hard, and respect the game. But as kids learn those core charter rules, they know what to expect. And it's the rituals and routines that kids have when they come out to recess that really leads to that safe space. And so that just gives you a little bit of overlap of what Recess Rocks has done and how that overlap with Ruler kind of comes to play to creating that opportunity for this type of learning.
Thanks, John. I saw a few questions coming in the chat. One about the Recess Rocks program and the Keep Playing digital free, I might add, program from PlayWorks. If you on the Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition website, which again is RIHSC.org, if you look under what we do, you'll see one of the initiatives, Recess Rocks, and you'll find all of the information there. And again, it's free. I know we're working with, I mentioned that both Barrington and Pawtucket, along with, I don't know how many now, districts, certainly over a dozen, have every single one of their elementary schools have gone through the training. Now, of course, we're not doing in person, but we are doing virtual training. So that's available for free. So you can go onto our website, find out more information, and contact us about that. Mark, I just want to clarify with you. I know originally we had said that we are recording this and it could be made available to people who registered but weren't able to attend. Is that correct?
That's fine with me.
Fine with you. Okay. And your slides, will those be available?
Sure, I'd be happy to send them to you.
Sure. Okay, great. So I will, after this, you will be getting a follow-up email and we're just going to ask you to do a quick survey, if you wouldn't mind. And we'll be having a link to our website, which will include then the slides, as well as purchasing the book from a local independent bookseller. If after this you want to purchase the book, click one link, you can do that. And then for all educators who may be looking for PLUs from your district, we'll also have a certificate of attendance. So you'll be getting that afterwards. Okay, so if anyone, I actually have just a couple of questions, but feel free everyone to put them in the chat, and any of you will kind of just can answer. I have to ask this because people are always asking, and it's about how do you get this funded? So we know, you know, Barrington and Pawtucket both are using programs. And then for Mark, what you're working with a lot of other districts, what have been different funding strategies and mechanisms?
Do you want me to answer that?
Sure, you can, anyone, but.
I mean, luckily that's not my department because I think that is some of the more complicated pieces of this work. One of the things that I wanted to share is that because of COVID and because of the way we've moved from being doing face-to-face to virtual training, two things. One is, in about 3 weeks, we're going to be launching a course called SEL During Stressful and Uncertain Times that will be available for free for every educator across the United States of America, which includes Rhode Island, I think. It's a 10-hour course that's very narrowly focused on managing difficult emotions during a pandemic. And that includes important work on anti-racism and culturally responsive pedagogy in that process of doing that for the self and for your students. It's not a substitute for a systemic approach like Barrington, like us, you know, taking SEL and like embedding it into the way, you know, Andrew leads, right? And the way the teachers teach and the way the students learn and the way families parent. But the way Ruler works now, it's a 2-year commitment to get started. And we charge $6,000 per school. That includes the 2 years. And it's all the virtual training, which, by the way, has gotten better ratings than our in-person trainings. People have really appreciated it because it's spread out across 6 weeks as opposed to like 2 intense days where you're kind of overwhelmed with content. And it gives you opportunities to think about implementation. And then it comes with coaching for 2 years and also a subscription to our online ruler community where you get access to just endless amounts of curriculum and resources and tools. So it's a little bit more, it's actually more affordable now than it was earlier. And, you know, I think everywhere from PD budgets to different grants and title funds that schools have used, you know, have been, you know, the ways of getting this funded. And I'll just stop there.
Okay, thanks. I think that's helpful, and that's great to know about that course. We're going to get more information from you and ensure that we link that. And again, we work very closely with the Department of Education, and I know the folks there that you've been working with will push this out so that everyone is aware of it and has that opportunity. How about, I don't know, Barrington, Pawtucket, anything, thoughts on, again, with your funding? How do you sustain that? Andrew?
Yeah, so definitely with the professional development comes from Title II. And for the materials and subscriptions, it's all in local funding. And I think what's important to note is that you know, having it part of your district strategic plan and your school-based strategic plan kind of really supports that local funding piece. So I'd like to suggest that.
Absolutely. I'll echo that, Andy, and I'll add that when there are private funds available, grant streams, right now our Rhode Island Department of Ed has a wonderful team from SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health, which again can be layered on to these federal funds to supply resources and training for staff, families, and students. So thank you to that team, because it's been a really championed effort to layer the funds and make sure that we can sustain the programming over a period of years.
Terrific, thank you. We've gotten a few questions too about, you know, commitment and buy-in. And that would be, you know, from the adults, from the leadership, and I'd go back to school committee. Who was it? I think, Andy, you mentioned, oh no, it was Sarah. I think you did, one of you did, actually your school committee. And I think, right, those are the policy decision makers. And so any advice again on how do you, I guess, number one, it's educating to how do we prioritize that? And as Mark said, so that people don't think of it as this soft skill, something that schools shouldn't be concerned about, because, you know, how do you assess that? Is that really important? Is that really our role? Any thoughts on how you get those leaders and the buy-in from the adults in the community?
I'd like to speak to that, Karen, if I can. We have a very involved school committee in Pawtucket, and they are champions for our community and for our students. And they intentionally seek the knowledge to make the decisions, especially in the area of policy, that are going to be evidence-based and best practice for our community. Mark made a statement earlier about the space between stimulus and response. And I think that that is incredibly powerful to remember, because somewhere between that stimulus and response, the space to choose your response and not your reaction is so important. And remembering the difference between what a response and a reaction is something that we are actively working on. So thank you to all who remember that and who take the time to consider it before decisions are made.
Right. I like just to add it with Barrington Public Schools, our school committee is amazing, and they're really focused on the social emotional well-being of all students and adults. And out of our work, we have a subcommittee called the Health and Wellness Subcommittee, and the Health and Wellness Subcommittee is really champions of this work as well.
You know, let me just make one comment about the buy-in piece. I'm going to be blunt about this, and I apologize. It really is a big part around leadership. You know, leaders of schools have to say that they believe in these skills and that they're willing to change their behavior and model these skills and make them, you know, give teachers the permission to do this work in their classrooms. And I just can't say that enough. You know, of the 3,000 schools that Ruler is now in across the nation and the world, the ones with the best leaders have the best implementation. So I just want to say that. And then I think the second piece is that we, you know, I come at this from a scientist's perspective. You know, I have my stories, and, you know, I think they are important to share because they make me a human and they let people see my journey and path. But my story is not the work. You know, the work is understanding the science about how children develop. And we are social and emotional creatures, and we develop through relationships. And we're going to develop better in relationships that give us the permission to feel. And we develop in systems where emotions are acknowledged and valued and cherished and nurtured. And when you understand that emotions drive the way our brains attend to things, when you understand that emotions drive the way we make choices, when you understand that the quality of our relationships is determined by how we feel on the inside and how people respond to us on the outside, when you understand that our emotions are behind our physical and our mental health and behind our creativity and performance, to me, it's then the leader who just doesn't care. And I hate to say this, but honestly, it's like the science is so strong that, you know, this is what it takes to develop a whole healthy child. And so I typically find it's the emotionally unskilled leader who is afraid of the work, right, that makes poor decisions for their schools and communities. And that once people get it, they realize they can't do anything other than it. So I hate to be so strong about this, but I'm just at the point in my career where I just have to be honest about how important this is for kids' development. And, you know, we've got 30 years of this work in our nation's education system, and it's still very piecemeal because people are not willing to make the commitment to embed this into the immune system of the school. And I said, if we're doing a good job, then we wouldn't have, you know, you wouldn't see a pandemic have such strong deleterious effects on people's mental health, right? That if we were really doing the prevention work, we would have prepared for this. And it's sadly the case, you know, that we're not, but I'm hopeful.
Well said, Mark. I have to follow up, Andy, on what you said about the district health and wellness committees. I don't know if you know, Mark, but in Rhode Island, we actually have a state law that our legislators passed in, 2009, that requires that every school district have a subcommittee, a health and wellness subcommittee of the full school committee. So it's co-chaired by a school board member and an administrator, and should include community members, students. I love it when students are part of this committee because, boy, they see things and have creative solutions to things that we can't even begin to think of. And so I'm going to encourage everyone on the call. There are many, Barrington and Pawtucket, who are represented here today, both have very well organized and very well led, that they meet regularly. But what's great about these committees is you're bringing together the leadership, the policymakers, again, parents, school nurse teachers, building principals together to have conversations about really the whole, I think, as you mentioned earlier too, Mark, the whole child.
And the adult, by the way.
And
I'm still in learning mode. You know, people think, oh, Mark, you're the professor or expert in emotional intelligence. I'm like, I'm a mess. I'm still figuring this stuff out. Like, I'm still working on it. And I think that's the difference between the social emotional piece and the academic piece. I've learned enough math to deal with my, balancing my checkbook and, computing things. But like, I tell you, this is much more challenging than any of us could ever imagine. And we have to be in a continuous improvement model for each one of us.
Yeah. Lifelong. We have to be lifelong learners in that way. Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we're up against time. I think we could all stay and continue this discussion. And I can't thank you enough, Mark, for joining us today and for sharing not just the amazing research that you're doing at Yale, that it's based off of, but I have to say your own personal story that I think has informed and really propels your work to this day. So thank you so much for sharing that. and to Andy and Sarah and John. Thanks for joining us and sharing the good work that you're doing in your school communities. And finally, I want to say to all of you, the attendees here, for making the time to join us this morning. I think we've all learned a lot about the value of strong emotional skills and those connections, not just to learning, but to life experiences and living. And certainly from the engagement with what we've had, we know that this is resonating and is really, really critical and important. So we're going to continue this work. And I just am thinking in my mind as I end here that I think we're really all able in some way, right, to be part of the kind of change that we really want to see in the world. And whether it's in large ways, whatever our role is, I think it will take all of us, but we'll be able to do it. So thank you again. Look for that follow-up email and stay safe, be healthy, and spread kindness.
Love it.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure and honor to be with you.
Thank you, Mark. Bye-bye, everyone.